Here's a summary of the help available to businesses affected by the coronavirus pandemic in the UK. I think the first measure that was introduced was grants for businesses with their own premises. These grants are either 10k or 25k depending on the rateable value of the property. So any business in the UK with a premises with the rateable value of less than 15k will qualify for the 10k grant. Local authorities have started writing to businesses that they believe qualify for the grant, although not all authorities have done this yet. So East Riding Council near us, they sent their letters out last Thursday, 8 days ago, and they've already built their website. So businesses in the East Riding, many of them have already gone onto the website, input their bank account details, and they're just sat waiting for their 10k grant. Other authorities aren't as quick, so you just got to basically keep an eye on social media, speak to other businesses in your area, and when they have received their letter, if you haven't, then that's the time that you need to be investigating why you haven't. So businesses with a rateable value between 15 and 51k, i.e. they are paying rates because they don't qualify for small business rates relief. If they're in the hospitality, retail or leisure sectors, then they'll be getting a 25k grant. And the process for distributing that is the same as the 10k grant. Should be receiving it sometime during April. They've also given rates holidays for businesses in the leisure, retail and hospitality sectors for next year. And they've now extended that to businesses including estate agents and letting agents, provided they've actually closed their shops. Other businesses, if you're no longer trading from your premises, then you need to look at whether or not you qualify for empty property relief. So if the property that you're trading from is empty, then you should get a 3-month rates holiday. Now, whether or not the council are going to look into whether the property is empty, i.e. you've cleared it of furniture, etc., time will tell. Some might argue it's worth a try. Then came along the Business Interruption Loan Scheme, or BILS as it's commonly known. Government have pledged to guarantee 80% of any loans or overdraft that banks give on the back of businesses approaching them because they're struggling because of the coronavirus. There's a few rules that you have to adhere to, a few qualifying criteria. So you've got to demonstrate that you were a viable business pre-pandemic. You've also got to demonstrate that you will return to being a viable business once the country returns to some level of normality. You're looking at a 12-month interest-free loan. Typically the new loans will be over 6 years, so it'll be 1 year interest-free, 5 years where you are paying interest. Some of the interest rates we're seeing are quite high, so you may be looking at getting in a position where you can repay the debt once you are approaching the end of the 12-month period. A lot of the banks appear to be going down the overdraft route, presumably because it's a bit quicker and easier. And if you've already got an overdraft in place, then possibly an overdraft extension is easier to organise than a brand new bank loan. 40 lenders have signed up. Most of the high street banks are on that list. Just be aware that some of the lenders are asking for personal guarantees, which doesn't really seem to be in the spirit of the scheme. So that might be something that's worth arguing if you are asked for a personal guarantee on the back of one of these applications. Then came the job retention scheme. We all learnt a new word. This was 7 days ago, last Friday, furloughed. So basically, whenever an employer puts an employee into fair load status, which we now know means they stay at home and don't work, then they're entitled to an 80% grant towards their wages, up to a maximum of £2,500 of their gross wages, which covers the vast majority of employees. There's a bit of a misconception here in that the government aren't paying the wages, it's the employer that pays the wages and then claims the 80% grant. Now, as the website to claim this grant isn't yet built, and there's a bit of a recurring theme here, then we don't really know how long you're going to be waiting for these grants. They're saying that it'll be up and running by the end of April. So businesses that have got cash reserves are probably going to be in a position whereby they can pay the wages and then wait for the grant to come subsequently. Those that don't have cash reserves, the government is trying to access the government-backed loan schemes, but it's unlikely that you're going to be able to do that in a short timescale, particularly if you've got wages to pay on Tuesday the 31st of March. You can, if you wish to, choose to top up the 80% to 100%. Again, whether or not you decide to do that will depend on the business's individual circumstances, cash balances, etc. And there are also HR implications of putting an employee into fair load status, so you really need to take legal advice or speak to an HR consultant. One of the main questions we're getting asked is, what about directors? Do they qualify for the 80% grant? This is a bit of a grey area. If the directors are fair load, i.e. the business has stopped trading, there's no work to do, the directors are sat at home doing nothing, then yes, they do qualify. If they're still working, do they? Bit of a question mark there. The new self-employed grant scheme that was introduced last night may help in that respect, in that they've said that the self-employed can claim the grant even if they're continuing to work. So I think many people are concluding from that that directors are able to continue working, because even if a company is in shutdown, it still needs running, it still has bills to pay, there's still administrative tasks to do. It would seem extremely unfair if the self-employed could continue working, but not the directors of small limited companies. But I guess time will tell in that respect. There's probably a lot more small print to come out in that respect. I hope it comes out before the 31st of March, but time will tell. Also, please bear in mind that it only covers pay-as-you-earn income, not dividends. So some directors are possibly thinking about going back to salaries and reducing the dividends. That's probably sensible anyway, given that dividends can only be paid out of profit reserves, and if your business is struggling currently, are there enough profit reserves to fund those dividends? So this is certainly one of the hottest topics around right now, and we've certainly been fielding a lot of queries about this particular area. The coronavirus time to pay helpline was set up 2 weeks ago, finding that they've been really helpful. We're not actually aware of any proposals that have been turned down yet, which is very unlike HMRC. They're being very understanding, they're accepting fairly long instalment plans. The only qualification to that is they are insisting on direct debits being set up, which I guess is fair enough. It's very hard to get through currently. They're obviously experiencing a lot of demand for the helpline, but also, as the on hold message keeps reminding us, they're also short-staffed because of the coronavirus. So our only advice in that respect is to keep trying, and at some point you're going to have to give up and send them a letter And we've devised a template letter which we'd be happy to share with you. Just a reminder that no businesses will have to pay any VAT for the next 3 months. So the quarter that falls into that 3-month period, you'd have to pay until April 2021. HMRC have now clarified you do need to cancel your direct debit if you've got a direct debit set up. So please make sure that you do that. And another element of help for both the self-employed and limited company directors is that there's no assessment tax payable in July this year. They are deferring it all until 31st of January next year. So whereas you normally receive a tax bill or a tax demand in June, that won't be happening this year, which will be a big help to many taxpayers. And then off the press, yesterday the Chancellor announced the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme, which pretty much matches the support that's been given to employees, in that they've agreed to give a grant which is taxable, 20% of the self-employed person's average profits over the last 3 years. Again, the maximum grant is £2,500 per month. There are a few people that don't qualify. So if your profits were over 50k last year, or have averaged over 50k for the last 3 years, you won't qualify. You must have filed your 2019 tax return. Now, we did actually give everyone a 4-week grace period yesterday. So if you haven't filed your tax return, you must do it in the next 4 weeks, otherwise you won't qualify for the grant. I'm sure there's a lot of people sort of scurrying around and digging out their books and codes right now as a result of that. No need to contact HMRC, please don't. They're already under a lot of pressure. They will contact you early June at the latest, and there's no cash until then, unfortunately, although it will be backdated to the 1st of March. Someone else that won't qualify is somebody that's newly self-employed, and I guess that's an anti-abuse measure. What I didn't want to see was a load of people all of a sudden saying that they've become self-employed in order to get their hands on this grant, which I think is probably fair enough. A few other measures to remind you about: 3-month mortgage holiday for landlords. So if your commercial tenants are struggling to pay the rent because of the coronavirus, you can apply to your lender for a mortgage holiday. That applies to landlords with tenants, and it matches the scheme that's already brought in for individuals who are struggling to pay the mortgage. Make sure whether there's any grants available locally for buying IT to enable your staff to work at home, crisis management, etc. I know where we are in the Humber LEP has got all sorts of help available. So just do a Google search on local grants to assist with coronavirus. Final tip is to keep an eye on our blog, which is www.360accountants.co.uk/blog. We're posting up things on there on an almost daily basis at the moment. You can also sign up to our newsletter and keep an eye on our social media accounts, which on Twitter is @360accountants. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Good luck for these next few weeks. It's going to be really tough. If you're applying 360, we've got your backs. Please get in touch if you need any help whatsoever. If you're not a client of 360, we'll also try and help wherever we can. Good luck. Try and relax this weekend. Try and recharge batteries for another challenging week ahead next week. Thank you. Bye.